first thing that I'm gonna get working on would be the spoiler. Let's go. So the first thing I'm gonna do is we have this drip rail that I'm gonna get rid of that goes around the entire top of the cab. But you don't just want to cut the whole thing off. You actually want to cut it off in sections and then just tack weld it. Otherwise it's going to come up and get all potentially warped on you. And so what I'll end up doing is just probably sectioning out a piece, tack welding it, and then just moving on. So let's get the drip rail off first, and then I'll start putting down my lines of where I already have this line, but where I'm going to cut the cab to separate this spoiler. All right, so I cut off my first section, and kind of like what I was explaining, you don't want to cut everything because you can see everything will start to release and separate. And so I'll come through, tack this, and I'm actually not going to weld this entire thing because I'm actually going to put an acrylic tail light that goes all the way across the back. And so I'm going to be doing something similar when I make one on my tailgate as well. So let me get these tacked and keep on cutting. Okay, slight adjustment. Scratch everything I just said about tacking it all together. I will do that on the front part because I'm keeping that roof, but the more I got thinking, I need to separate the top part of the spoiler, which will be from here to here, because I want to retain the roof on the inside of the cab, but I also want the spoiler when it flips up not to be hollow. So imagine it being like if I took a cross section, there'd be a top layer for the spoiler, the bottom layer, and then the roof lining. And so what I'm ended up doing is cutting this off completely, pulling it off the cab, cutting this little section out, because that'll be part of the spoiler, and that way I retain the roof skin on the inside of the cab, and then I will make my own sheet on the bottom of the spoiler, if that makes sense. So let's not worry about those. All right, so I need to change my idea. Once again, that's just part of building stuff. You think you have an idea, but once you get into it, you're like, that's not gonna work. So I'm not gonna use the inside top of the cab. Couple reasons why. I feel like it'll just be easier because, I mean, once I have my spoiler, I want it to sit flush. And once it's engaged and lifted up, you'll see all this, and it just doesn't look good. So I'm just gonna keep it smooth. Little convertible, quarter convertible action. Okay, so now I need to seal the cab back, which how I'm going to do that, and part of the reason why I'm not using the original skin is I'm going to use an 1/8 inch plate, mainly because there's going to be stuff mounted to the wing. It's going to have leverage on it because it's going to have to push the wing up and withstand the pressure of wind pushing on it. So I may have to gusset it as well. That's still to be determined, but for starters, this plate is going to be 1/8 inch steel. So time to use my favorite tool in the shop, which is cardboard. CAD, baby. So let's go. this welded in, kind of blended. There's still some highs and lows that I gotta go and work, but for now, we're gonna move on to the next thing, which would be putting a piece of steel here, just so water and everything else doesn't get in. But before I get to that, I think I'm gonna start working on the spoiler itself. So if you can see, kind of get an idea. So this is gonna go back in its stock position. This, of course, I will weld back on that. And then, of course, the fun part is once I get to figure out how I'm gonna actuate it, it'll go up like this. Man, that's massive. Yeah, so what I'm gonna end up, I'm gonna have to sheet the bottom of this. I'm probably gonna have to gusset it somehow so it doesn't flex. I might actually use another 1/8" plate underneath. And then something that's I haven't really discussed, or maybe I have, can't remember, old age. I'm going to channel in a piece of plexiglass, so this whole thing is going to be a tail light. Alright, so I welded this front part of the wing to give it some support and make it a little bit more rigid. I will add more, but as you can tell, once we put it kind of in place, the roof is low, which is understandable. I took a quarter of it out. So part of the reason why I started with the wing is now the correct shape, so I can now adapt the roof to make sure once I add this piece for support, it lines up and everything looks flush and the gaps are good. So let's get working on that. All right, let me just go throw this in my plasma table. Psych. You know how I cut things around here. I wish I had one. All right, now that I got this tacked in place, I need to come through. So when you're welding, especially sheet metal, you want to make sure there's a little gap like this, so when you grind everything down, it doesn't break apart or you don't have a really tiny weld. So for example, if I welded that, I'm just gonna have all sorts of problems once I grind that down. So I'm gonna come back with a little grinder wheel, probably on my Dremel, and just open up these spots that are a little tight. And then I'll come back and tack it all together again, throw down some beads and grind it, smooth it, rinse and repeat. Now that I have the top of the cab kind of welded, I'm working on my spacing. So everything looks pretty good, but once I get to here, this piece that I welded on is popped out. You can see how you can see the 1/8" sheet right there, and then up here kind of disappears. So I'm gonna have to recut this and then push that piece back in to get the gap to be uniform. So I started working on kind of the frame of the acrylic taillight section. And so I cut out this 1/8" sheet, bent it to the wing, and then I'll tack this in place, and then I'll cut this little trim piece, and I'm just trying to give it a little bit more rigidity. Jeez, say that 10 times fast. And so I'll have an 1/8" plate here, piece of plexiglass kind of like right here. That's what will shine through for the taillight. And then I'll have another plate up here. That'll also give the edges, instead of having just thin sheet metal like this, it'll actually have like an 1/8" plus this. So it'll give it a little bit more strength, and it'll just look better instead of just having two thin pieces of sheet metal sandwiching the piece of plexiglass. So got my big sheet of plexiglass right here. Kind of drew out the design already. So I'll get this tacked in place, cut out another piece, and then see what it looks like. So I've actually used plexiglass and etched the surface so it has a fog look to it on a couple of different projects. I'll show those right here. So yeah, if you've never used it, it's actually a pretty cool application that you can use for pretty much anything, because you can throw it in your oven or use a heat gun to bend it to any shape. So just an idea. I'm not the first one to ever use it, but it's definitely a cool little addition that you can add to like a custom project. All right, been test fitting, trying to get an understanding of how this wing is actually gonna lay. So right now I have a little bit of a gap, which is fine because I'm gonna have some rubber stops when the wing lays flat. I don't have to worry about it rattling around or anything. And then of course the piece of acrylic goes in here. I still need to weld this. But the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start finishing welding this piece and then trying to figure out the hinge of where exactly it's going to hinge on the truck so I get all the clearance that I need. So we'll start working on that. So much grinding and welding, but we're finally to the point where I can stop working on the channel for the acrylic LED tail light. Okay, so before I plate the bottom of the wing, I need to run some channels for some wires. So I'm not sure which side exactly I'm gonna run the wires for the brake light and running light, potential blinkers, who knows. So I'll run, what I'm gonna do is just drill a hole here, and then weld this in place so I can get some wires through, and then the cab's right here, and so I can drill a hole in the cab or do whatever. So at least I'll have a passage to get wires in and out of this wing. The acrylic piece is rough cut into place, bent. So now it's getting this other plate, sandwiching it together, creating a backstop, which is also another spine, which I'm gonna weld another spine right down the center just to keep it from flexing. So yeah, one piece at a time, we're getting there. Now that I've cut the piece of acrylic, I'm gonna get my bevel tool, and if you've never seen this before, you can bevel metal, acrylic, I mean, you name it. It's just got little carbide bits in there. And this is one of the handiest tools in the shop to get a perfect bevel. And on top of that, they're inexpensive. They're on Amazon or eBay. I can't remember where I got this from, but I've used this a ton and it's still working. So you can kind of, I don't know if you can really see it, but got a nice bevel right there. So I just gotta do this whole, both sides. And so once it's in place, it'll look pretty good. So I finally found the hinges that I'm going to be using for my wing, and they're just a hidden hinge, pretty heavy duty. And what I'm going to end up having to do is, I can't just bolt it like this because then I'm going to have a 3/4 inch gap between the cab and the wing. So I'm going to have to cut this out, weld in a 1/4 inch plate back here, just so when I bolt it all together, my goal is to have anywhere from 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch gap between the cab and the wing. So that just means I'm gonna have to recess the hidden hinge into the wing and then into the cab as well. Hinges are in. So now I just need to replicate the same thing I did on the wing on the truck. This is the little 16 gauge plate that'll go on the bottom side, and then I also, just for some strength, just welded in some pipes right there, or tubes, to, since that's where all the weight is going to be distributed, so that should help with flex without it preventing it from flexing. So now we got to do the same thing we did here on the truck. Two weeks of working on this wing. You just saw me tack weld it in place, and this is my first time actually moving it up, so a little nervous that I didn't get it aligned, but I feel like I did a pretty decent job, so you guys will see it the same time I see it. Okay, I'm hitting a little bit right there, but I can adjust that. But hey! Yes! It's moving, it's not binding. It's pretty stiff. And I still have to add this bottom plate to it, but I am pumped. Well, I'm gonna end the video right there. I still have to plate the bottom of the wing and do a few other things, but next week's video I'm going to get some pneumatic cylinders on both sides that'll actually actuate the wing, and I'm gonna put them in the cab in between the 2 different layers and make its own little box and then hide it and make it look pretty clean looking. So that's the plan. So appreciate you watching. Tune in next week.